Having come face to face with the tattooed pirates plaguing Vilbrand and their mysterious masked benefactor, we return once more to Limsa Lominsa. Stronger, wiser, yet still unaware of the series of rapidly unfolding events we have been caught up in. Since we are still just a humble adventurer, one of many, our activities have barely registered in the city of Limsa Lominsa, which may just be for the best. Later on, we will find ourselves looking back to these innocent days with nostalgia for simpler times, but for now, we've made enough coin to afford a few drinks at the Drowned Wench before it is time to move on. Baderon points us in the direction towards Western La Noscea, urging us to find a Rogadin by the name of Wyrcrit, the head of the Skylift. The Skylift is a man-made scaffolding made to help transport goods and people across the cliffs created when Bahamut seared the lands with his powerful magic. Wyrcrit is relieved to have more hands to help him, and immediately sets us out to help a local wagon driver, who had to throw some of his millicorn off the cart when violent monstrosities emerged from their bags. We track down these violent monstrosities, and find that they are shore slugs. Not the most pleasant thing to find in your corn, but miles better than what we had expected. We meet up with Lali-ho in the town of Swiftperch, a small settlement in Western La Noscea where the driver had taken refuge from the sinister slugs that startled him. Lali-ho hopes to make Swiftperch a bit more independent by growing corn locally, and with our help he's well on his way. Yet nary has the farmer began planting his seed when we are approached by one of the local Yellow Jackets, who points us towards the Brewer's Beacon, an old lighthouse whose guidance aids visiting ships in navigating the reefs of La Noscea without danger as they approach the Aleport harbor below. It would seem that Kanswis, the lighthouse keeper, might need some help. It turns out she does. Apparently the locally sourced fuel for the lighthouse, a bomb, has gone missing, and Kanswis needs us to find it, put it down, and bring one of its claws back for emergency fuel while she investigates its means of escape. Bombs, as you can probably guess by their names, are these volatile little things whose explosive personalities make any attempt at socializing go up in smokes. After retrieving the claw, Kanswis lets us know that the furnace has been thoroughly messed up, which allowed the bomb to escape in the first place. She's tried patching it up herself, but she asks us that we go to Swiftperch and check if the Yellow Jackets there know anyone who could help us out with it. Now Freylof, the Yellow Jacket in charge of Swiftperch, is of course way too busy protecting the small town from angry plants and wild dogs, so he points us to the Armorers Guild in Limsa Lominsa, confident that Forgemaster Hinansa can help us out with the busted furnace. Well, apparently Hinansa already sent someone to do routine maintenance on the furnace less than a week ago, hinting that maybe Kanswis's choice of homegrown DIY fuel might not have been the best choice. Since we're not a paying member of the guild, she informs us that one of her artisans will handle the repair job, ensuring that the secret art of furnace repair stays a guild secret. And since we've now checked out Western La Noscea, Hinansa sends us off to Lower La Noscea and another port called the Moraby Dry Docks, where the finest craftsmen of Limsa Lominsa work tirelessly to rebuild the fleet of warships the city lost during the calamity. We're given a missive to hand over to Athbirm, the head shipwright of the dry docks. Naturally, she doesn't tell us that the message we're delivering is the news of yet another delay in delivering crucial parts for the shipbuilding, something Athbirm's not too happy to hear. Still, he's professional enough not to take his frustration out on us, but instead shows us the ship he is currently working on, the Victory. She's the first of hopefully many ships serving as the reinforcement to the fleet, and Athbirm and his shipwrights have been working day and night to see her finished. He asks for our help in finding a young shipwright named Firilsmid, who recently left to retrieve supplies from a merchant named Halbroda in Candlekeep Quay. Luckily this time we don't need to travel too far, and soon enough we're threatening Halbroda with a one-way trip to Belize.
Belize? Yeah, Belize.
Aka Turtleback Island. Once we've established that we mean business, Halbroda quickly admits that he truly doesn't know anything about the cargo, having been busy salvaging the Lominsan ship that recently was sunk nearby at the Salt Strand, a beach partly devastated from the impact of one of the pieces of Dalamud crashing down during the calamity. Halbroda convinces us to help find survivors of the shipwreck down at the shore, and we oblige, quickly running into Firlsmid himself, who's hiding from the scavenging Cockern, beastmen from a tribe considered relatively harmless, and who regularly trade with the other races of Eorzea. He admits that he lost the goods when he went out to sea to meet the merchants that were bringing them in, only to have both his ship and theirs be sunk and the goods washed ashore. The fisherman who helped Firlsmid drowned, a burden that weighs heavily on his mind, but once we return the goods to him, he promises to deliver them himself, after he pays a visit to the man's widow and informs her of her husband's tragic death. Atbirm's happy to hear that his shipwright is fine and contemplates if the sinking of the ships were the doings of the Sahagin, who have recently grown more bold and aggressive in their attempts to scare off the Lominsan people. Knowing that we are to be trusted, Atbirm and the local guards hire us to spy on a suspicious group of pirates who have been making camp close to the dry docks. After a little bit of poking around without much luck, we finally learn that they plan to blow up the Victory, the warship being worked on. And as we rush to the side of the local guards, we find out that the leader of the pirates, Adzapfin, is actually the father of the head shipwright Atbirm. Adzapfin is enraged that his son is working on helping the Maelstrom, and is disillusioned with Limsa Lominsa losing sight of its roots as a pirate nation. We, of course lacking any kind of sentimentality on the issue, beat up the pirates, and their beastmen mercenaries, and the captain himself, before handing them over to the Yellow Jackets, saving the Victory and the day. Before we head back, however, we're asked to hand over a coded message that was found in the pirates' belongings to Badaran of the Drowned Wench, whose vast and somewhat dirty past might help deciphering it. Turns out they were right on the money, and Badaran quickly breaks the code, revealing that what had been happening in Lower La Noscea had all been a distraction on order from the Sahagin, making sure the local authorities would be busy and allowing the fishmen and their stooges, the Serpent Reavers, to attack Swiftperch and kidnap its people. We quickly alert the commander of the Yellow Jackets, Raynor, of what had been found out, but even as he deliberates where to send his troops, one of his men report that the Tide Gate, a bulwark against the encroaching Sahagin settlement, is under attack. Without much of a choice, he asks us to support the few defenders he can spare for Swiftperch, as he has to divert his main forces to the Tide Gates in hoping of keeping back the attacking beastmen. Once we arrive at Swiftperch, we meet Risflo, the very same Rogadin Yellowjacket who once welcomed us to Limsa Lominsa when we first arrived. We barely have time to greet him before the Reavers make their presence known, revealing their plans to sacrifice the townfolk at the altar of Leviathan, the primal of the Sahagin. A great battle ensues, and the Serpent Reavers throw everything they have against us, including a summoned Void Scent, a type of malevolent dark spirit from another world. Eventually, however, we stand triumphant, and with their leader slain, the remaining Reavers flee. Risflo picks up the hunt, asking us to remain behind in case more of the enemy show up. But barely do we have time to catch our breath before the masked man we met before once again makes his appearance. Summoning a gargoyle to aid him, the masked man swears to destroy us. But with the help of a suddenly appeared Y'shtola, we stand fast and slay both the gargoyle and its master. With his dying words, the man reveals that he is one of the Paragons, a group which Y'shtola explains are also known as the Bringers of Chaos, or the Ashians. She explains that she, or rather they, whoever they might be, have suspected these Ashians to be behind the recent troubles with the Beast Tribes. Unbeknownst to her, of course, we happen to know that she's a Sharlayan, and as we press this issue, she seems surprised before realizing that we might be hiding a power she was not initially aware of. Yet before she can explain more, Risflo and his men return, and Y'shtola depart without revealing anything more. Before we leave as well, we stumble upon a crystal shard like the one we found in the caverns. Yet this one is glowing with a malevolent energy. And just as we are about to pick it up, it dissipates into nothing, and we return to Limsa and Commander Reiner, who debriefs us on the events. This is where we first meet Admiral Bluefishwind herself, who presents us with a grand reward for the help we've provided the city. She informs us that she's heard great things from her two friends, Raynor and Baderon, and she wants us to be the guest of honor at a celebratory feast she is putting together. Baderon lets us know that we better dress fancy, and sends us off to get a pair of really nice shoes, so we don't make an ass of ourselves at the feast. And once we've gotten those swanky footgear, we're finally able to join the big leagues and rub shoulders with the rich and famous of Limsa. At the party, we once again run into Y'shtola, who spots the crystal of light we picked up while back in the cavern. She remembers that we spoke of facing a larger crystal that spoke to us, and she and the Admiral draw the conclusion that we might be chosen by the Mother Crystal, just like the legendary Warriors of Light. Bluefishwind tells us of the Battle of Carteneau, where the Empire faced the forces of the Grand Companies of Eorzea. It was during this battle that Bahamut was released, and the Warriors of Light disappeared, the names, faces, and voices wiped from the memories of all Eorzeans. Despite their greatness, it would seem some force would have them go into the annals of history simply under the epithet of Warriors of Light, and nothing more. Before we can respond, we are suddenly struck by a vision that brings us back to the conflict at Carteneau through the eyes of Bluefishwind. We are made to relive the whole experience, witnessing the forces of Eorzea and Garlemald alike be annihilated by the great primal Bahamut. And we also see another robed man, an Ashian, watching from afar, amused by the spectacle. The leaders of the allied Eorzean forces pledge to stand with Master Louisoix, whoever that might be, and as the vision ends, we find ourselves waking up in our room at the Drowned Wench, where Baderon tells us how we fainted in front of the Admiral. Once he's made sure we've recovered, he sends us back to the Admiral, who wants to speak with us. Merlwyb lets us know that she wants us to act as an emissary of Limsa and visit the city-states of Ul'dah and Gridania on her behalf. It has now been 5 years since the battle at Carteneau, and it is time to move on. She is proposing that a memorial service be held for those who gave their lives for Eorzea's freedom. In order to expedite the journey, she hands us an airship pass which allows us to travel via one of the city's airships. As the people of Limsa waves us off, we take to the skies, our first stop, the forest city of Gridania. Yet as the scene fades, we are greeted with a different scenario. An airship vastly more advanced than ours soars through the night sky, before landing at a military fortification named the Castrum Occidens. As its passengers step out, clad in strangely familiar armor, the soldiers of the garrison greets them. As we are treated to a flashback from 15 years ago, another attempt by the Garlean Empire to conquer Eorzea that ended in failure, we realize that this is Legatus Gaius von Balzer, the head of one of the Empire's mighty legions, who has returned to Eorzea to once again attempt to conquer her lands, this time bringing with him a mysterious weapon carried in by air. Gaius curses Eorzea for its reliance on false gods, and declares to those gathered that only through Garlean rule can any semblance of order be restored to these rotten lands. A convenient justification for the Empire's militant expansionism, yet one that he seems to believe in wholeheartedly, and which none of the gathered question. All this is witnessed by a spy of the Eorzeans, but before he can find a way to relay this information, he is overheard by one of the Legatus's followers, Nero Tolskaiva, a genius scientist and engineer. He makes quick work of the spy, and mutters how someone named Garland will soon learn the true power of Magitech. Once more, our attention is brought back to our own journey as we arrive at the Gridanian airport, welcomed there by an honor guard from the Order of the Twin Adders, the Grand Company of Gridania. He points us to the Lotus Stand, where we are to meet the Elder Seedseer herself, Canisena. Canisena retells the battle at Carteneau, and how the fall of Dalamud happened due to something called Meteor, a forbidden project which was conducted by the Garleans. The result of it was the complete annihilation of the 7th Garlean Legion and most of the forces of the Eorzean Alliance. The Archon Louisoix might have shed more light on the mystery of their survival, but as the dust settled, he was nowhere to be found. Canisenna agrees that a ceremony should be held and points you next to Ul'dah, bidding you tell the Flame General Reborn that a pet wolf of hers has been stirring and causing trouble lately. A cryptic message, yet one that Reborn understands but doesn't elaborate on. Instead, he further deepens our understanding of the Garleans as he recalls how a legatus named Solus Zol Galvus became the first emperor following the discovery of Magitech. He proceeded to swiftly subdue the other nations of the Ilsabard continent before setting his eyes on Eorzea. Yet the emperor is now old with no obvious heir, meaning the Garleans have withdrawn to focus on the selection of a new emperor. Only the 14th Legion, led by Gaius von Balsar, remains in Eorzea, entrenched in a region called Mor Dhona to the north of Ul'dah and in the center of the main continent of Eorzea. The 14th Legion may be cut off from Ilsabard, but with the nation of Alamigo under its rule, the Empire has the nation of Gridania in a vice, and may at any time once more set its eyes upon the Eorzean city-states. As Reborn accepts the proposal by Admiral Bluefishwin and leaves to inform the Sultana of Ul'dah, we are left alone, musing on what we have just been told. In a short time, we have gone from being an anonymous adventurer to an emissary of a nation, quickly forced to realize that the current stability is merely a facade, as the Eorzean city-states desperately seek to rebuild their forces before they are once more attacked by the Garleans, all the while the beast tribes threaten to unravel all of their hard work. With our minds weighed heavily by this knowledge, we head back to Limsa Lominsa and the Drowned Wench to meet Baron, who once again needs our help. And so ends the first part of our journey. Moving forward, our city-state of choice will have no impact upon the story as we take a step out into the larger political landscape of Eorzea. Having earned the respect of the leaders of the 3 city-states, we have no idea what fate might have in store for us. Who are the Ashians? And the Archon Louisoix? What of Y'shtola and her suspiciously deep knowledge of these masked enemies attacking us? Why was a pair of nice shoes all we needed for the feast with the Admiral? Perhaps the future might have answers for these questions, but for now I would like to thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed this summary of the events of the MSQ up until level 15. If you picked Gridania or Ul'dah as your starting cities, your first adventures might have played a little bit differently, yet some parts will remain familiar. Maybe you made friends with Papalimo and Ida, or grew suspicious of the roguish Tancred. Regardless, thank you again for watching, and thank you so much to my patrons who helped me work on this content. Bambi Parsons, a leader with an unbreakable will, and the Methuselah Her Satanic Majesty Danny, whose presence chills the blood, and Socrates Johnson, a scholar and a craftsman of stories. We also want to thank the Primogen Council of Alexander Kishtaria, Lauren Eason, Nikolai Marius Voiculescu, Procyon, and The Only Body. We raise our cups in a toast to the Elder Quinn Sullivan for their support. And thank you for watching, Warrior of Light. May the light of Hydaelyn ever shine your way.